Hello, 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 hello. How's everybody? I hope you had a great week, and I hope that everything you wished for came true. It's been a good week in a lot of ways, and an awful week in other ways. I found a snake in my garden this morning, and I flipped out. And it was about that long. And it was all kind of various different colors. I'd never seen a garter snake before, so it was an experience and crazy, crazy, crazy. And it made me think about my my subject this morning. We're talking about character studies, and within that framework, we are talking about protagonists and the antagonist, which I this morning was the protagonist because I was trying to get my garden done, and the antagonist was that dumb snake that was in my garden, was preventing me from doing it. Of course, I smashed it with the biggest rock I could find, and then I cleaned up and everything. I didn't clean that up. I'm waiting for somebody to come by to take that rock off of it so they can get rid of it, because I will not do that. But that snake was the antagonist, and the antagonist was annoying me to no end. I am definitely afraid of snakes. So I want you to know that the first thing you must do as a writer is to identify in your book who is the protagonist and who is the antagonist, or what is the antagonist, because the antagonist could be anything or anybody, whatever. It could be a rock, like this morning it was that rock prevented the snake from doing what it wanted to do this morning, and that snake prevented me from doing what I wanted to do this morning, was to complete my gardening. So in this case, we had two antagonists, and really two protagonists, because the snake was going about his business. I'm going about my business. The snake prevented me from doing what I wanted to do, and I prevented the snake from doing what it wanted to do. So the first thing you must do as a writer is to identify who is the protagonist. And the protagonist usually is the leader or the leading person, the leading character in your story, because you're going to follow that person through the entire story. As this person grows and moves through your story, it must tell a story that's worthy of that person being there. They must have a purpose. They must have a goal. And what the antagonist does is to prevent that character from reaching that goal. Like I said, it can be anything. A protagonist can be anything. And for an example, a few weeks ago, we had an earthquake here in Philadelphia. That was an antagonist. And who were the protagonists? The people in his wake. So, and then you have hurricanes, who can serve as an antagonist in the story. You have flooding situation, or you can have one protagonist in your story who is trying to get through a flooded area, or it is overwhelmed by the circumstances of a flood. We through this process of dealing with that flood. So we must look at your story in the same way. You want to put yourself in that situation and put yourself in the protagonist situation, because you're the person that's going to be moving through that whole story to a resolution. And usually the story starts with an issue, a problem, or a circumstance, and that protagonist at the end of the story moves smoothly or unsmoothly, as in an earthquake or a tornado, and they get to the end and what is their outcome. And you have to identify who your protagonist is and explain why that person's in the story and talk about that character. You have to do the back study, remember, who that character is. Well, with the antagonist, which I think is the best part of writing, because there's so much that you can explore in this way of talking about life and circumstances around us humans and what happens to us. But the antagonist is one of the most interesting things you want to explore. And the reason is because it brings excitement to the story. It also brings problem solving, and we're all here to solve problems. So that's one of the things you really want to concentrate on, and make sure you spend time describing who your antagonist is. And you don't have to do it in any rapid succession. You can start out with maybe like saying a flood, a river that's flowing smoothly through a valley, and then at the next minute it turns into a huge gigantic flood during a storm. So that's like the developmental stage of the antagonist. Whereas the protagonist, how they perform in that situation, is the heart of your story, and that's going to flow through your story to the conclusion, whatever you decide that is. So let's think back and let's personalize the situation more clearly, and just think of this. When did you discover your first antagonist? Say you are the protagonist in your story, and just say as a young child, who's the first person you encountered as an antagonist? Nine times out of 10, it was either your mother and your father, because you probably had ideas as a young child or little toddler exploring your world around you. And what that parent was in his own right was a protagonist, but he was an antagonist in your life because he prevented you from doing certain things that you wanted to do for your own good. For your own good. So they are an antagonist, but they're also a protagonist, because they are doing the protagonist real goals, which is to keep you safe. But to you as a screaming, maybe not so cooperative toddler, you may not like that. And most children don't. They scream and holler when they don't get their way. So that's kind of the first thing that we encounter in life. The other thing would be, what about siblings? Your brothers and sisters, how have they prevented you? Or, it may be simple as, you made a birthday cake, or you made a cake, or you made cookies, and they go in and eat it up. You wanted the cookies maybe to serve the family at dinner and to get some praise for your work. And here comes this person and eat up all your cookies. So they destroyed your goal. They prohibited you from doing what you wanted to do. And that is the function of an antagonist. It stops you from doing things that you want to do, your goals, your ability to create the life you want for yourself. And we have to think about it. And I want you to think about all the instances in your personal life where you had antagonists. Most of us have had our share of them, and that's perfectly normal, because everything in life is God-centered, God-made. No matter what we encounter, it's there for a reason in your life. And it all comes to serving who and what you are and your goals. Same thing with your writing and your characters that you write. They have a purpose. They have a goal. They have a destination. So you're going to start at the beginning of the book, just like you're going on a trip. In order to start your trip, you have to get on the airplane to go where you have to go. So you're going to start that story out talking about how wonderful and amazing it is to fly on a wonderful airplane or not. That plane could become an antagonist and create some unwanted circumstances for you also. But anyway, this story is not on the plane. This story is going on through life. They're going to a destination, maybe to the Bahamas or something exotic. I have no idea. But what do they encounter? What keeps them from getting to their destination? It could be a you know, it could be an airplane, trouble with the airplane, which the airplane becomes an antagonist. It could be you driving through a certain area that's flooded. So the flood, in a rental car, maybe could be that, or the person sitting behind the counter at the rental agency saying, "No, you can't have a car. We're sold out." But you have made all the preparation to make sure that car was there for you, but it's not there. So what do? You have to solve a problem, and that's what the protagonist does, and that's what we do as readers. We follow that person if they're interesting enough to their final destination. So what's going to happen in that storyline, and how many antagonists are we going to encounter? And the other question is what kind of antagonists are we going to encounter on this journey? So there's a lot you have to discover and to look at and examine and do research on, because everything needs to be have a background of research and knowledge. Your knowledge of the subject is the most important thing behind all of this. But this is just another way for you to analyze your stories and analyze your characters and look at what you're writing and make sure that it is a legitimate person in the story. Make sure that the storyline has a purpose, it has a beginning, a middle, and then the ultimate destination. What's the goal? And what's driving that story to get there? Those would be how that person's desire to get there, or something that's preordained, or is it something in their mind they're trying to accomplish? Is it, and then too, it could be something, a mental condition that's driving this person to do what they're doing, and that in itself could be antagonist, because sometimes our negative thoughts prohibit us from doing things. So many, many, many ways to look at and examine an antagonist. And especially in that story, we must know who's good, who's bad, who's evil, who's unintentionally evil, who's unintentionally blocking the protagonist from getting where they want to go. And what if the outcome of what the protagonist wants, what got it turned around. What would happen if in your story, if the antagonist turns out to be a protagonist? Maybe they're trying to drag that person to a certain place, or stop them from doing one thing when they could have a happier place, a happier position, or a happier destination if they go a different way. So there's so many twists and turns, and this is the beauty of writing your own stories. And it's fascinating, but get in the habit of doing this. And it's like an exercise in your mental mind. You can do this while you're resting at night, or when you lay down for a little cat nap. Think about the situation. And I'm thinking about, we're talking about my two books, Enslaved and Enslaved Part 2. They're loaded with antagonists because this is a slave culture, and that is something in itself that is a huge overriding antagonistic situation. Okay, so that whole idea of slavery is the antagonist in this story, but there are also sub characters in the story that are antagonists also, which is the people who are after them, the hunters that stole them from their village, the people on the boat that are keeping them in prison. It's even the food that they eat, because that stops them from living if it's not prepared correctly. And most of the time it wasn't, or if it's disease or whatever. Sometimes it's the ship. Sometimes it's the doctors on the ship who give or who may give care and who may not give care. So there are tons and tons of reason, and like on that ship, that would be the ship's captain that's ultimately responsible for everybody getting to that destination. But he's also the person that imprisoning the protagonist. And in the story, we have we have the protagonist, one single person that we are watching from front to back of the story, which is Princess Gemma, and that is in. I won't lift my books up again. I will find that story, the book cover for you, so you can see it. I don't have to sit up here and tell you about it when I can show it to you. Okay, takes a minute. Okay, let's see what I have. I have found it, I think. Getting closer. Here we go. This is Enslaved. And as you can see from this situation, We have lots of interesting things. We have a picture of their village. We have the people they are going to. We have the slaves, the enslaved Africans who are being transported by ship on this. We have the continent of Africa. We have the continent of the USA and South America, showing the geographical situation these people are caught in. So the book itself, the book cover itself depicts a lot. And that's another thing you want to pay close attention to, is how you design, or who you get to design your covers. Now, I particularly like original artwork. I don't like graphics as much. I only do that if there's absolutely no way to do it otherwise. So that's something that you will have to decide as the author of your book. And we also have Princess Gemma Part 2, and this is Enslaved Part 2. And our protagonist in this story is centered on Princess Gemma, because we are following her story from her childhood to her adolescence, and then we're going into the time when she was married, and we're also going to when she was captured and placed in captivity. We're going to see her on the coast of Africa. We're going to see her on the slave ship. We're going to see her once she reaches the USA, what happens to her. And we're going to see her as she functions on a plantation. So this particular book picks up from her arrival. It goes from that point to the plantation. And part 2 goes from the plantation to her life after she leaves the plantation. These are great books. I'm telling you, get them both. They are excellent. If you want to be in tune with what happened to our people during slavery, I did the research, wrote the story. All you had to do is read it, to feel their pain, to feel their anger, to feel their embarrassment for being caught in a situation, which it was a most prevalent situation in their lives. It also evokes a kind of a spiritual sense of their determination to survive, those who survived and did so no matter what their captors did to them. So this is a real testimony for our survivors and our ancestors who actually reached this country and were able to maintain their lives so that we could be here today. So for those of us who were enslaved, they met tremendous obstacles in order to get where they're going. So the story would be to your advantage in telling your history and your family story to your children. So this is something I want you to look at, read it, encompass it, and understand each part of it. And as a writer, if you are a writer, I want you to take a look at it, examine it closely, identify every scene if you can, and find out who is the antagonist, who is the protagonist, how many are there, and just identify them. And that practice will help you get to where you want to be. We're going to go into a lot of details about the protagonist and the antagonist and what roles they play and what form they can take. But as an assignment, I want you to make a list of your favorite movies and TV shows. And then I want you to analyze them and tell me who your protagonists are and who your antagonists are. But I also want you to tell me how many different types of antagonists do you have in each story, and list them. What are they? And some of my favorite ones that I'm just going to go off the top of my head, because I like, movies that are high energy and gives out a lot of food for thought. What if? And I like the Die Hard stories. I love that because it's a clear distinction between the antagonist and the protagonist. And there are also the circumstances involved, and there are also subplots and people who come in to support each character. and just the actions are very clear. And then when I'm thinking about characters, as I'm building a character, what and what anchor am I building them on, and why? You have this protagonist. Why would someone support this person? Why would someone not support this person? And you go on in your mind to work this out before you start putting it on paper. And that's when you do your sketch, your profile sketch of who their character is. When you first start out, you want to make sure you do her history or his history, like we did in Slave. We told you everything. And I'm not sure that of course that doesn't show up on this your book. You want to make sure this is um, it's clear who your characters are and why they exist in your book. It's going to be like, sometimes it's going to be like threading the thread through a needle. Sometimes it's going to be quite obvious what that is, and you'll enjoy it. But in some protagonists are helpful, and some no, it's not the protagonist. Some antagonists are helpful, and some are not. Some are downright evil, and there's some clear distinctions in the stories that we have around us today, in the movies and on TV. They're very clear who the antagonist is, and some of them are downright evil, 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 evil. And sometimes they're the most colorful because they have the biggest contrasts in behaviors. So you want to think about that as you're creating your characters. So in this one, we have quite a few. We have some human antagonists, and then we have um, some antagonists that are not human at all. They are ideas, like slavery. Okay, that would be an antagonistic situation that you can write about. And there are things on the ship that could serve as antagonists because it keeps the people from doing what they need to do, like the chains on the wrist and whatever. And since we're talking about slavery, I want to mention that we in Philadelphia have a slave history museum, and it's ran by one of my dear friends, two friends, uh, husband and wife, the Ragsdales. It's on Germantown Avenue in Germantown, Philadelphia, at the Germantown Historical Society. They have the basement floor because they have a tremendous collection of paraphernalia. And one of the things I did as I teach and did teach Black history is to show our children what that looked like. I always ask them to bring that display to our children so they can see the apparatus that was used on our ancestors. And one of the things that fascinated children most and horrified them most is they saw these little teeny chains that were placed on the arms and legs of infants. It was that big, just teeny little things. And they were so saddened by that. And it took quite a while to explain why another human being would do this to another human being. And the first thing is they didn't see us as human. So, and that attitude and that belief is what enslaved us. And that's another antagonist, beliefs and attitudes. So I bid you to go out, explore your world, and identify who are the protagonists and the antagonists around you, and consider yourself to be in your immediate area. I am a protagonist. So what are who are the antagonists around me, or what is the atmosphere of antagonism around me, to work out some issues that you're dealing with in your stories. It will be most helpful, and it would be so exciting because you introduce you could introduce a creature that no one has ever seen in their life. You could create situations in our lives that has never been presented to humankind ever before. And I think another favorite action movie I like is the Star Wars series, because the protagonist is here, and then the great antagonist, Darth Vader, it's very clear who he is and what he's there for. He is there to inhibit and stop behaviors that the protagonist wish to to serve and to complete. So he was a very, very, it was very clear who the antagonist and who the protagonist was in this movie. So whenever you watch a story or movie, find out who and what that is, what situation that is, that person is in as the protagonist. Because remember, the protagonist is the person you're following through the whole story. And your antagonist is the person that, or the conditions that prevent that protagonist from getting to their goal or their destination. So I invite you to explore, have fun with it, and come up with any kind of concepts, whether it's a horrid monster you want to create for your story, or some very evil presence, evil person, someone who, has nothing but evil thoughts or hatred even for the protagonist. So enjoy the experience. When you look at even looking at the news today, it's obvious. If you don't know the difference, you can see clearly who the protagonists are in this country and who are the antagonists. So sit down and work on this concept, clearly define situations that are definitely require a label of protagonist and antagonist. Okay, it's been great. You guys enjoy and explore. Do your research. Once you identify those characters and you decide to use them, do their profiles. Make sure you know who they are, why they exist, what brought them to that position of, that attitude and behavior that they have. Make sure you understand that before you start writing about them, because if you don't know what you're writing about, it's not going to be effective. So make sure they have your label. And then the tricky part is you get to play both roles. So you put yourself in that person's situation. When I was thinking of this character in Enslaved, and giving her life and breath and color and personality, and her surroundings, just dressing it up and building it up from nothing. As I was doing that, I was concentrating on her background. Who was she? Number one, where did she come from? How did she get to be such a helpful person to her people? How was she able to be the princess she was because of her background? And who were the people who trained her? What did they teach her? And what was her family history like? Who was she as an adult person? And how does she follow through with the teachings that she had gained from her parents and her family and her family structure? What was that like? So do the detail work. Once you do that detail work of research and writing out that your character's profile, you will find tons of things that would just flow from you once you get your story going and you're actually doing the writing. It would make your stories glide. And if you do an in-depth study of the personalities, who these people were, like when they first came to your mind, who was this person? Who was that person? Like, do two people meet? Okay, right away. Why did they meet? How did they meet? Where did they meet? Okay. And then who were they? And what was this person's background? What is this person's background? Why are they dressed the way they're dressed? Why do they have a certain look in their eye? Or do they have a certain look in their eye? Is their look clear, distinct, like a curiosity or whatever? Or is it pointed and doubtful? You have to decide all of this. And I welcome you to do it all. Explore everything, and enjoy the process. Where this is absolutely a fabulous thing that you want to do. You always want to. I'm trying to find some slides, some little things I want to put on the screen. So to tell you about my book and how to order it, I'm going to put that up for a moment for you to see that. But I want you to, most of all, get involved in writing, and please encourage all our children to do this, whether they do it for a living or not. They could start writing poetry. They can start writing what you call hip hop songs, which is only poetry, another word for poetry, set to music. But they can put those ideas on the table. Loving bedtime stories is something children are always anxious to participate in and hearing and falling asleep to. But that's also planting a seed to being a writer and being able to write and being able to read. If you learn to listen and you learn to hear stories put together in a well organized manner, they crave that and they will want to create it or to continue doing it by reading. And reading is the key to everything. So encourage that, and make sure that you just tell them our history, because we are the first people to write a book or word on a page or a symbol on the page that represent communications, and also music. We were the first people to make the drum. I'm not that good at it, but but I love doing it. But we were the first in everything because we were here hundreds of thousands of years before any other race appeared. So we are the architects of everything, and it would not hurt you or your children to learn that and to know that and to also participate in it and use it as a stepping stone to what they want to do in life. So be sure to introduce reading in your family, and reading family stories. Telling stories is really a wonderful thing. Even if you don't want to read them, you may want to tell some great stories. And once they become like me, author, because I hear so many great family stories, I want to put them on paper. And there are many stories that I incorporated into my books that actually happen in my family. Some I can tell you about and some I can't because I'm sworn to secrecy. Okay. We have a lot of things in the family. And I don't share if it's not a good idea, if the family won't like it. And don't share things that will hurt anyone else. That's the rule. Okay? You hear the thing. You guys, have a great day. Enjoy. Whatever's coming up. And if you, like me, are busy doing your gardening and starting this to bring people alive with lots of beautiful things, just embrace it. And even if you haven't tried it, right? I love it. Together and talk right now protagonist and antagonist associate. Hope you have a great one. I love you. Peace.